Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Louis D'Souza, and this is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. We're kicking off another week here on LOA Today, looking at all the different aspects of what it's like to live with the law of attraction in our lives, in our daily lives. Even though we don't often mention the actual phrase law of attraction, it's part of everything that we do and everything we talk about here. And I think it's one of the reasons we call it your Daily Dose of Happy, because we kind of figured out a number of years ago, Louis, it's actually better to attract when you're in a good place. I mean, isn't that a funny thing?
Most definitely.
And I have a couple of topics to bring up today. One actually is based on an email that we received from Avi, who's one of the listeners who has written in before. And I thought it would make an interesting topic for you and I to discuss today. By the way, for people who've been wondering where Amy is, she will be back next week. She's celebrating her wedding anniversary with her husband today, but she will be back next Monday. So looking forward to that. But Avi writes to us, he says, "Hello, Walt. I hope you are well and Happy New Year. I wanted to ask a question on how to develop abundance mentality. Let me explain. Feeling lack of, say, money makes us take uninspired actions like canceling TV subscriptions, eating cheaper food, going out less, etc. But doing that, does that not perpetuate the poor feeling? How can we live in a way via which we can feel abundant and also live within our means?" It's quite complex, but I would appreciate any kind of advice. So you want to take a stab at that one, Louis?
I remember my dad saying to me, every penny saved is every penny saved is a penny earned. And it's an ancient old philosophy is that when you're in hard times, you really want to cut back. And of course, from an abundance law of attraction point of view, you need to follow the path of least resistance, don't you? So, if cutting back gives you a meal for the next week or two, then yeah, you're going to feel really good about it. But if cutting back feels bad to you, then, that's not something you should be doing. So following the path of least resistance is always my advice in that kind of scenario. Then on the other side, having abundance mentality, which most of the LOA guys really focus on, is, sitting there with no money in the bank account and just visualizing it filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up and enjoying it and having fun watching the bank account fill up, and it's just fun. And I don't care where it comes from or how it comes from or who it comes from. The universal law of attraction can deal with that. But I'm just looking at what I want, and just focusing on it. So, yeah, it's very important to understand what to do with cutting things out, because I've never found that being very effective with myself, because it does kind of put you into that poverty mentality.
It's a very delicate tightrope to walk. There's no doubt about that. And it's one that I've had quite a bit of experience walking, more than I would care to have. We do live in a world of contrast, and I have discovered that side of the contrast very well. But I have discovered a few things along the way that have helped me, and I'm curious to kind of compare notes with you, Louis, to see if they match up with what you have experienced. One thing that I found made a huge difference. It took me a long time to kind of implement this, because I don't know why I never thought of it at first. I had to have like 3 or 4 co-hosts point out to me that it was a good idea. And I thought, I should really give that a shot. But it's a really simple one. When a bill comes in, you pay it immediately. And the reason you do that is it doesn't hang over you anymore. Yeah, you're still dealing with all the stuff you're dealing with. Yeah, you're perhaps even fighting day to day to get into that high vibration place. But at least that one thing that can pull you down can't pull you down anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing when you do just that.
Check, always write on the back of it, even if it's for your gas, electricity, or anything. Thank you very much for your support.
Yes. Yeah, that's also good practice to go with it. Mm. Yeah. But that one little thing I found can be enough just to kind of push you past that, what they call the tipping point. You have that halfway point where you're kind of there, you're kind of not there. It can just kind of, not always, but it can sometimes push you into that higher vibe place. And of course, the truth is, once you get into that higher vibe place more regularly, it becomes easier to stay there. And that's really what we're trying to do. Whether it's with abundance of money or anything else, any kind of abundance, we're trying to get into that higher vibe place on a more regular basis. Hence your daily dose of happy. But when we get into that place more regularly, then it gets easier. Every time that we run into one of these situations, like where we're dealing with a chronic condition of low cash, it just becomes a little bit easier to stay high vibe, a little bit easier to stay high vibe. And that, oh God, it just, if nothing else, it makes you feel better. I think that's where I learned the idea that it almost doesn't even matter what you're trying to attract into your life. What matters is how you feel about it and how you feel about your life in general and what's going on and how things are working out on a minute by minute basis. Because that's where I found that I had the most effectiveness, if you will, on how my life was playing out. And then over time, you kind of look back over time, you say, oh, my finances are improving. Mm-hmm. I can't really point to one particular place where they happened. We just kind of started getting better. It just kind of started getting better a little bit at a time. And I think it's because of just doing these little things, paying the bill quickly rather than letting it hang around. Like you say, writing thank you on the back of the check. If you're paying electronically, put thank you into the memo because it's a little memo.
Just do it mentally. That's what I do these days because everything's direct debit. So, you wake up in the morning just so grateful that you've had lights for and electricity to use your computer, everything.
Yeah. And that's another big piece of it, isn't it? The gratitude piece. Because it's so easy to not be grateful for the basic stuff you do have, even if money is tight. It gets so easy to think about all the stuff that you don't have, but we actually have quite a bit. I mean, I call it going back to basics, but we have a roof over our head. We got food to eat. We've got clothing on our backs. We may be tight on money, but we're meeting our bills. Those are all worth celebrating. And it's easy to forget doing that, but there's another way to get into that higher vibe place.
But it's important to have the real gratitude, not just use the words.
Yes.
Even if it's mental words, because the universe only picks up on what you really mean.
Right.
So you've really got to get yourself into that place with the law of attraction to say, this is what I'm saying, but this is what I mean. And really being clear about the difference between those two, because you must understand very clearly that the universal law of attraction only reacts to what you mean, not what you say. And until what you say, which some people are doing affirmations, etc., turns into what you mean, it's not particularly effective at all.
Yeah, it's one of the phrases I like from Neville Goddard. I think probably the best thing Neville Goddard ever gave us was the phrase, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, because that feeling is where the truth comes in. Whatever you're actually feeling. It's funny, you can label it anything you want. You could feel great and call it terrible. As long as it feels great, it still works out great. Assuming you can do that. Not everybody can do that, but
As I was saying last week, if I've got a teacher and they're talking rubbish, but they're doing it excitedly and passionately, I'll listen to them all day, I really don't mind because, it's the universal law of attraction as well. It doesn't matter if you're putting out rubbish. If you're excited about it, it's going to start amplifying it. Or if you're scared about it, it's going to start amplifying it. So, whatever massive emotion you've got around is just going to really amplify it.
Yeah, if you're going to go for rubbish, go for the good stuff.
Absolutely. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, hey?
That's right. Yes. I thought the same thing as you were saying.
I'll ever read.
Oh, my goodness. But it's so true. Yeah, that feeling piece it's easy to try to fake it, but faking it is only, to me, like a jump starter. When you stay in that fake it mode, that's where you get into all kinds of trouble. If you can kind of use it as a jump start to start reminding yourself, oh yeah, this is the way the word X feels, and then start feeling it, then, fake it.
Then you're on the right track, yeah.
Yeah. Just don't stay in the fake it mode. That's all. Move into the real mode. The other thing that I think is a big deal, and this is something that the Abraham teachings I think are really helpful with, is the idea of momentum. The idea that the more that you focus your attention on whatever it is, you're going to build a momentum about it. And again, I don't know about you, but I found that what happens is the more that I focus attention on something, say more than a minute or two, I find that even if I didn't have the feeling at first, after a while, the feeling that I normally associate with it comes in.
The law of attraction will bring the real feeling into it.
Exactly.
It will start, that faking does start making. Yeah.
Just have to stay consistent to what you're feeling. Now, there is an important caveat I'll throw in here, and it's in line with what we're talking about. I mentioned earlier the value of focusing your attention on what's going right. You have a roof over your head, you have clothing on your back, you have food on the table, you're able to, pay the basic bills, that kind of a thing. the caveat is you have to feel good about them, really good about them. You can't just say, oh yeah, I have those, because that doesn't get you anything. I have a lot of experience with that too. I'm just saying.
Well, what it does get you, Walt, is the trains going in different directions. So you're feeling a little bit like this, a little bit like this, a little bit like this, a little bit like this. And you get that kind of not going anywhere, treading water feeling, but you're
Yes.
kind of swinging a little bit this way, swinging a little bit that way, swinging a little bit this way, swinging a little bit that. And you've got to get past that stage. And you become very, very aware on all the different subjects in your life. That subject, the trains are going in both directions. That subject, they're going more in that direction and that direction. This subject, and you become so clear, you know exactly on different subjects in your life which way the trains are going.
The other thing that I find, at least I found in my case, I think it's probably true for most people. Because we live in a world of not just contrast, we live in a world of high contrast, especially today. There is a lot of high contrast going on. And in this high contrast world, there's a whole lot of stuff for us to focus our attention on that is not really very nice. I've always been amused by Alex King's way of looking at it. She says, I like watching this stuff on TV. I don't want to actually live it. I just want to watch it on TV.
Go to the movies, man.
Go to the movies, yeah. But there's a kind of a little bit of a warning flag that's in there. And that is, if you spend some time during your day actually doing what we're talking about, appreciating the fact and feeling the fact that the bills are paid, that there is a roof over the head, that there is food on the table. And then you go right into focusing on how terrible it is that X political situation is happening, or paying close attention to the serial you've been watching of the axe murderer, or, whatever it might be that is not a good feeling place. You just undermined all that work you've been doing. And I'm not saying you should never look at the contrast. I'm saying give yourself a chance to actually live the positive vibration that you are trying to build up. Create a little balance here. Balance isn't just 10 minutes of positive affirmations and then 23 hours and 50 minutes of misery. That's not balance. Balance is like more, 50-50 maybe, or I'll settle for 25-75. I mean, a lot more attention given to the stuff that you like. Doesn't mean you have to spend your whole day on it, just a lot more than what people often do. Because that's how you end up in that space you were talking about, Louis, where you're just kind of shifting back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You don't seem to go anywhere. Well, that's why, because we're so focused on, yes, okay, I did my affirmations for the day, but God, I love this murder mystery. Balance, guys.
You guys love the drama.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's what we come here for, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Well, that's what Abraham teaches us. They teach us that we come here to experience the contrast, because in the contrast is when we do our creating. We start, how many times you said, here on the show, somebody says, I really hate X, and you say, oh, that's wonderful. And what you're meaning by that is that's the start. That's the beginning of the creation process. So yeah, that's why we come here. That's why we're doing it. There's nothing wrong with contrast. There's nothing wrong with any of it. It's just about what do you want to accomplish. If you want to accomplish abundance, then you have to make shifts in the way that you've been doing stuff compared to the way you have been doing it in the past. You've got to change the pattern a bit. So
I remember there was this really gentle, loving old lady who I considered extremely spiritual at the time. And I was hanging around her house after a meeting or whatever, and then she said, oh, I've got to watch my soap. So she sits down and watches a soap, like Dallas or something.
All right.
And I was like, what? You're so spiritual and aware, but you're watching this stuff. It threw me completely. It was like, wow, okay. If your life is so balanced and peaceful, you kind of like watching the drama of others.
There was a wonderful movie from, I think it was the late 1990s or early 2000s, starring Sean Connery with a very young Rob Brown, called Finding Forrester. Sean plays a reclusive writer who lives in the Bronx in New York City, in a section of the city which is now, the projects. And one of the African-American kids in that project befriends him. There's a whole story that's associated with that, and wants to learn from this writer how to be a better writer. And so the guy becomes like a mentor to him. And at one point during their private sessions, the kid asks Sean, he says, why do you read this? And he holds up a copy of the National Enquirer. He says, you should be reading like, the New York Times or something. And Sean's answer is, well, New York Times, that's dinner. But the Enquirer, that's dessert.
Yeah, same concept. Yeah, I love it.
Exactly the same. So hopefully that's helpful to Avi. Hopefully he's getting some use out of that. And then this is kind of like a follow-up, but I figured it as sort of the broader topic for us to talk about today. But it ties in directly with what we've been talking about here. I just wanted to kind of get your take on it and see where we can go with it. The question is, does it matter whether we can manifest stuff without taking action to make it happen? I mean, so much of what we do, what we learn from the LOA gurus and so forth is all about, get into vibration mode. Just be somebody who attracts vibrationally. And so it leads to a debate that sometimes pops up about, well, should you just try to be a couch potato attractor, or should you combine attracting with taking action? What's the mixture here? So I'm curious what your take is on that.
Well, as I was chatting to you about it after the program, after our last session, very, very much the kind of spiritual philosophy between the East and the West and how it differs massively is the East is very passive, sit down, let everything happen. And the West is very go out and get it and do it, all the rest of it. And, Abram kind of puts it in a very simple way. He says inspired action. So inspired action is taking the East's philosophy and doing the inner preparation, the mental preparation, the getting into the vibration of what you want. And then you will get inspired action. You'll get ideas. Oh, this will work, or this will work, or this feels good. And then you go out and you action that. Then you've got the perfect balance between the East-West philosophy. I think the East could learn a lot from the West, and the West can learn a lot from the East. And I think we have over the years. And, when you put those two together, you're really drawing from the source of power that creates worlds, from source energy, and you're doing it in a very active way, but that action is inspired action, and it's you just go out there and you do it that way. And I think for me that's what's worked very, very well. I'm very much with the Eastern philosophy and sitting back and doing all the mental preparation, and I'm not that active on the getting out there and doing things like Joel, etc. But I am learning to play with the balance of both of those worlds, and it's exciting because once you get it, everything becomes easier and easier and easier.
That's a great word you use, to play with it, because I think that really is the source of the answer for any given person. For some people, it is going to be more of a sit back, couch potato type approach. For other people, they're going to prefer the action-based approach. And I think a lot of it has to do with what your personality is.
Yeah,
and
your personality is preference.
Yeah. I mean, if you are get out there and do things stuff, you're going to want to get out there and do things. I mean, that's what's trying to attract it. I think the Abraham lesson is just make sure you do the vibration work first. Don't do that. Don't try to do it second. Or if you're going to try to do it second, at least do it the way Joel does it. The way Joel does it is take the action, and while you're taking the action, remember to raise the vibration up.
You can do it that way.
It works.
Both ways work. So, as long as the vibration is raised along the way, all your action it's going to work really nicely.
Yeah. Where we get in trouble is when
that vibration is high, you really get that inspiration. You get those aha moments. You get those cooperative components, those right people at the right time at the right place, which are so precious and important to getting things moving forward.
And contrary-wise, where we get into trouble is where we take the action without getting into the high vibe space. And so we're constantly
the West is
paddling upstream.
Yeah, the West is completely that way orientated to a huge degree.
Yeah, we're very good at it,
Yeah, so good at it we get depressed and frustrated and angry and when it doesn't work properly.
And then we wonder why it doesn't work properly. And then we say, well, it's all the church's fault. So
Law of attraction doesn't work. It's not real.
yeah, none of that works. Yeah. That's a funny thing. It's also interesting too, how often we will defend that position of taking action from a low vibration place. And the most common kind I can think of right now, I don't want to get too much into detail stuff because I don't want to start bringing in the wrong vibrations, but it's stuff usually where there's some kind of a cause involved. It doesn't have to be political cause, just some sort of a cause to, fix the world in some way. And that cause is almost always associated with some form of, oh, you got this anger and you got to build that anger and you got to share the anger with everybody else. And everybody has to get so angry to do this thing, because if we all get angry enough, it's going to make the world change. And then it never plays out that way.
You get violence and people breaking into shops and stealing things. That's what you get when you
yes.
when you go down that route.
And the people who go that route, it's amazing how they never notice that they don't get to their goal. Right? It's like they become perpetual advocates of, yes, we have to band together. We have to do this thing. We have to, and if you aren't,
and not vote and not go out and do this and not petition.
And if you're not doing it, your head's in the sand.
Exactly. I would have fallen for that philosophy and concepts and ideas in the old day. I did. Thought, yeah.
Many times.
Yeah. And until you understand how it really all works, you are very likely to fall for that. It's quite a powerful motivator for a lot of people, get them on their side.
Well, even when you do get it, I did get it, and I still found for a long time I was drawn to the dark side. I was drawn to that energy for a long, long time because I think it was because it was habitual. I was so used to it. It was such a major part of my thinking, and I hadn't really purged it, shall we say, from my vibratory practice. But it took a while, and it still does. I mean, I can't say that I am perfect about this by any stretch of the imagination. Far from it. I still slip fairly often. The difference now is I recognize when I slip. I say, "Whoop, no, don't want to go down that way."
And that recognizing is the word we use for awareness.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what that is. It's awareness, and what's the other word? Mindfulness. It's paying attention.
Oh, I don't like that word, but that's just me.
Why don't you like mindfulness? I'm curious.
You've taken an incredibly evolved concept called meditation, and you've whittled it down for the Westerner, and you've now called it mindfulness. That's the way I look at it. That's why I don't like it.
That sounds like a good thing to me, so I'm kind of confused.
I can see that this would work for a lot of people. This would work for a lot of people because it simplifies it, it clears it up, it makes it accessible, it takes away the word yoga and meditation and, and all the rest of it. For a lot of people, it's a bit of a block. So mindfulness is okay now. But, the history and the depth and breadth to which the Indians and the yogis have gone into understanding it is gargantuous compared to where the Westerners come with the understanding. They haven't even touched the surface. They still think yoga is a bunch of physical exercises, where yoga includes so many things that are nothing to do with physical movement at all. It's, you get the yoga of doing your duty. I don't know if you know that.
I'm not into yoga, so
yeah, I'm just mentioning it, but there's so many different levels and types and kinds of yoga that you wouldn't even recognize it as yoga. And they've really gone to town about breaking it down and understanding it to a degree that I've got a lot of respect and appreciation for it. And then when the West goes and takes it and turns it into the word mindfulness, it's like,
It's interesting too, because when you said that, I resonated a little bit inside, although it turns out for a different reason, maybe actually a similar reason, depending on how you look at it. But that's why I was so curious, because I had always had this kind of feeling about mindfulness.
Mm.
But for me, it was more along the lines of, well, mindfulness is kind of an indirect way of saying what it is. And I always prefer the more direct way. So for me, it's just paying attention. It may not have a catchy word associated with it, but it's paying attention.
But if you understand meditation more clearly, you actually don't want to think at all. Your thoughts are of almost no value whatsoever, because all your thoughts are dredging up old experiences and thoughts, and you're just hashing them around the place. That's all it is. So when you stop that, when you still it, like Abraham says, then you start touching source energy, and then the new inspiration that comes in, that is what you're looking for. You're not looking for anything of mindfulness. You actually want to mind knownness.
It's an interesting thing because there was a time where I used to say, well, I can't achieve mind and knownness, to use the phrase you just used. And I have since achieved that. For me, I don't find the great meaning in it that others have found in it. For me, the greatest meaning I found is, hey, my mind finally got quiet. Thank God. That was literally it.
There's a huge amount of relief in that all by itself.
There is, yes. But beyond that, I didn't really ever associate any kind of, importance to it or anything like that. So to hear you describe how, well, when you're in that place, now you're in a better place to be able to receive new inspiration and so forth. I suppose I never really had any trouble getting inspiration one way or another. So I guess that's why I have trouble associating with it, but maybe it does make a difference. I don't know.
Well, what I love asking people is, what have you manifested, brought in on any level into your life that is unique, that it's not a rehash of something else?
We had a discussion like this one other time when you were trying to ask this question of the Stream of David. And I guess the difficulty I have, the question is that the question for me is unique within what context? Unique within the context of my own experience, or unique within the context of universality? If you're asking me about the second one, I can't even begin to answer the question. If you're asking me about the first one, I can answer that over and over again, but it's going to be a lot of stuff that is not going to be unique to what other people have thought about. It's only going to be unique to me. So which way do you want me to answer?
I've thought about that a lot as well, and I've come to the same conclusion. I said to my daughter the other day, cleaning your shoes on the grass. I said, did you just think of that, or have you heard it from somewhere else? And she said she heard it from somewhere else. And then I thought, if she hadn't thought it from somewhere else and she worked it out herself, it would be unique to her.
Which is a very common phenomenon.
But I've even looked in my own life. I've already analyzed it, and I haven't found very much that's unique, that I haven't...
unique to you or unique universally?
Even unique to me. Because I've been looking, almost everything that I've come out with, I've had unique experiences.
What do you mean by that?
Nobody's Louis, nobody's, born in my family, nobody else.
Okay.
There's a lot of unique things that have happened.
Okay.
But beyond that, when you start coming to look at any of the common things, or even the philosophy that I bring up, I've taken from Abraham Hicks, I've taken from loads of different gurus, etc., and different paths and different things of, how much is uniquely mine? There's not a lot. It's like very, very little. I've talked about my epiphanies and, other things like that seem to be fairly unique to me, but, other people have had similar things. It's not that much different. So,
but I think that's where you're starting to get a little bit, that's where you start blurring the boundary, I think. Because, again, the question is, are we talking about unique to you, or are we talking about unique to society? If we blend those together, then you're never going to find anything unique. I guarantee it.
Well, let's say finding the light bulb. That was a first unique type, getting light to come out of something, bulb or whatever you want to call it at the time. Einstein, E is equal to MC squared. That was unique. It's completely, totally unique.
But again, we got
examples enough.
I got to hold you to a standard here. Are we talking about unique universally or unique to an individual? They are not the
Well,
same
I would
question.
say universally, and then you would say there's nothing you can do about it.
Well,
And then when I
I
say
would go beyond
individually,
that.
then you'll say there's lots of things. So yeah,
I would go beyond that. I would say that Thomas Edison was not necessarily the first person to uniquely come up with the equivalent of a light bulb.
hmm
That there were others who did it before that, to one way, one degree or another. Maybe not
well,
with the
then
kind of
it
final
would be
bulb he
unique
came
to
out
them.
with. What's that?
Then that would be unique to the planet. Then that we're the first person who came up with it.
I'm not sure you can trace it back far enough.
I don't know.
Again, it depends on how you define the thing, I suppose.
Mm.
You know, if we're willing to limit it down to who was the first person to put light into a vacuum cleared glass bulb that can't be entered without breaking the bulb, plugged into an electrical source, yeah, probably pretty close to Thomas Edison being the first one to do that.
Yeah, as you say, that conversation with the stream, I was trying to get to the bottom of what have I uniquely created to help expand the source, and I still didn't get a clear answer on that.
I still don't understand why it's important.
It's just important to me because I feel that if you can really grasp that and clarify it and put it in some kind of clearer context, you could run with it. You could really work with it. I think you could take it to another level very, very quickly and easily, but I need more clarity on that. That's something I've always looked for.
But why can't you do the same thing? Why can't you do the same thing with an idea that borrows from somebody else?
That we?
Well, I think you just described how if you had a unique idea, you could run with it. That you could just take that unique idea and start expanding it to a new level. And I guess the question I have is, why can't you do the same thing with an idea that you borrowed from somebody else?
You can, because then it'll be unique. As soon as you expand it, it's unique. Yeah, we've all got a foundation.
I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure that's, well, I guess it depends on what you call expansion now.
Well, I mean, if I expand a light bulb to an LED, I think that's quite unique. You know, I don't know. Still an expansion of an existing idea.
Okay. What makes it unique?
What makes it unique is
Yes.
the low amount of energy that it requires and the amount of light that it emits versus those 100-watt bulbs we used to use in our house versus the 1-watt bulb, which has pretty much got the same amount of light as that 100-watt bulb in the old days. So.
Well, how low is low? I mean, I believe wasn't it Tesla who came up with the fluorescent light, which was a lower wattage from an incandescent light, but not as low as an LED light?
That was unique expansion of the bulb, yeah.
Okay, so every single slight improvement becomes unique.
I would guess so, yeah.
So literally almost any change we make as far as we know that it is something we've never experienced before, then it becomes unique. Okay.
And I was
so
just
if I cut my hair just a little bit different, then it's now unique.
Yeah.
So again, I guess I have to wonder about, that sounds great, but where's the problem with unique? I don't quite get it.
I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. I never really looked at it from that viewpoint. And just hashing it out with you on this call is really helping me seeing that just those slight variations are a level of uniqueness. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. I like the idea.
That's the essence of improvisation. I have a musical background, and when you study music, at some point you decide you want to start playing around with your own invention. In fact, when you look at the history of classical music, you find that the classical composers and classical musicians would start with somebody else's themes, and then they'd create variations on them. And by creating variations, they made them their own. In fact, there are entire classical pieces that are called variations, where they started with one thing and they just cranked out 25 different versions of it, 25 different ways of playing the same thing.
Well, as soon as you've got a different orchestra, a different philharmonic orchestra playing the same piece of music, because they are uniquely different, it's going to come out slightly differently, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've listened to lots of different renditions of, say, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. But they're quite significantly different when you listen to them from different...
They are? Yeah. Yeah, 5 different people blowing air into a clarinet are going to come out with 5 different ways of making sounds. It's just the nature of it.
So really, what I'm finding here is more of an answer is the tiny variations, which you create for yourself are, are part of the bigger expansion. You may perceive it to be very small in the beginning, but it's interesting.
I think I'd also add in the idea, even if I could find some way to perfectly duplicate in every single way without any unique aspect at all, something that you had done. So let's say I just saw you take a drink of water. So I'm going to take a drink of water, and I do it exactly the way you do. There is nothing different about it. And in both cases, we started off feeling a thirst, and then we quenched the thirst. So we went through a little small dip and up cycle, a little small contrast cycle. We were thirsty, then we quenched the thirst. Okay, so a little bit down, a little bit up. Not a whole lot there. There's not a lot of variation going on there. Is my action any less expansionary than your action? That's my question.
Yeah, when you're looking at those minuscule expansions, then it puts a different light on things. Take me a while to go through it in my mind and see what I can.
Okay. Yeah, give it some thought, because I don't really see it makes a lot of difference. I don't think it makes any difference whether the action is unique. I think the only question is it going down into the contrast and coming back up again? If it is, it's expansionary.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with trying to be unique. I think it's fun to be unique. That's part of the human experience. That's one of the things we come here for, to see that new sunset or that new sunrise, or to experience that mountain we haven't experienced before, or to experience that walk we haven't, or that new person we haven't met.
Experience something new now. Do you like this?
He's changed his glasses, folks.
We'll make it even better.
You look like an old TV cartoon character called the Green Hornet with that hat and mask.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Comic book character originally, but
that was who was that? The actor again, Bruce Lee.
Who played? Oh, well, Bruce Lee played his assistant. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was classic Bruce Lee. Absolutely. It was the first time where you saw on, at least here in the United States, where you saw on television somebody engaging in what we now think of as karate and saying, "Oh my God, what was that? How did he do that?"
Yeah, it was funny when Bruce Lee was in the movie with Chuck Norris. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Afterwards, I had an interview with Chuck Norris. So he said, how good is Bruce Lee? I mean, you're the world champion in karate. How good is he? And he said, well, he's an actor and I'm a world champion.
Do I hear a gauntlet being thrown down?
He said, can't really compare. It's like, okay.
Which is ironic because Chuck Norris became the ultimate actor. So
yes.
Like, what do you want, Chuck?
I was really laughing at that.
Oh my goodness, I'm surprised.
I actually watched the YouTube on that interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Was this while Bruce Lee was still alive?
I think so. It's very old, but I don't know.
Because if he was still alive, I would almost be surprised if he didn't do something to kind of put Chuck to the test. Because he was known for that.
The interesting thing is Chuck Norris in the movie where they played together is he lost to Bruce Lee. So, it's interesting that he allowed his ego to accept that kind of role in a movie, which was quite interesting. But, I have so much respect for Bruce Lee and his legacy and all the rest of it.
Oh, his legacy is amazing. Truly amazing. Let's just put it this way. There are plenty of guys who can do things that I have never even been able to dream of doing, but he did it more beautifully than anybody else. I mean, there was beauty to the way
There
he did
was. But the fascinating thing is I watched a movie of all the footage before he had the accident with his spine
it.
and after he had the accident with his spine. And he was so much more graceful afterwards,
Yeah.
so much more finesse. And I was just blown away because I just watched the whole, like, life story of Bruce Lee, all the footage, the original footage beforehand and all the original footage afterwards. And it's like it was a completely different character. He was so much smoother and finer and more precise. And yeah, it was just incredible.
It makes me think I have a feeling he was one of those people who he may not have known it consciously. He may have, because obviously he was schooled in Eastern philosophies, but even so, he may not have known consciously that he was engaging in what I would call conscious creation. But when he had that spinal injury, I got the distinct impression he used conscious creation to heal himself.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was directly involved as far as I can tell. I mean, that's not necessarily the way the story is told, but boy, it sure looked like it from my perspective.
I mean, from the perspective, you watch the movie where he's in this traction upside down,
yeah,
and his wife's underneath him, and he's dictating the book that he wrote. What is it called? Each one.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, it'll come to me. And that book was so clear. It was really simple, straightforward, to the point, and really, really, I read that book quite a few times, because I did Kung Fu myself, based on his style. But yeah, my Kung Fu instructor, Myron, was quite fun. I went to the field where we were studying, and I saw this guy doing these moves on the field, and I was like, hey, that looks really cool. I went up to him and I said, hey, what art do you do? He says, no, I do Kung Fu. This is a Kung Fu form. I said, oh, that's great. I said to him, well, what level are you? So he said, oh, I'm actually an instructor. I said, oh, where's your school? He says, I don't have one. I said, I'm your first student. He said, okay, come to me every Tuesday and Thursday. And that's how we started. Him and I started a Kung Fu school together. And, and then for 6 months, he just trained me with my hands, nothing else but my hands.
Really?
And he eventually put these Bruce Lee gloves on me, which allow the fingers to stick out. So you've got padding. So when you hit the jaw, biggest reason why they got padding, one of the biggest reasons is when you hit the jaw, your teeth cut the inside of your mouth to pieces. But when you got the padding, it doesn't cut the teeth don't cut the jaw. And we were sparring with your hands after, you had trained me only with hands for 6 months.
Right.
And we put the gloves on and he started, this is a full contact martial art that I teach. And he hit me in the face and I went down, I put my hands over my face. I was on the ground and he stood over me, he bowed and he said, Louis, this is going to happen often. The important thing is to get your eyes back on the target. And he always does this. Eyes back on the target. And, that was a life lesson to me. It was one of the biggest lessons to me. No matter what happens in your life, how you get meshed around and hit and etc., get your eyes back on the target. Get your focus where you want to go. And, from an LOA perspective and any perspective, that was a tremendous lesson that I learned from him. It was absolutely brilliant.
What does that do for you, do you think, having that ability to just go right back to focusing on the thing you're trying to focus on? Well,
just in the martial arts itself, when he hits me in the face, my head would just turn around and go straight back to look at him instantly. And, you become a hugely more effective fighter because you're not down on the ground or looking over here or worrying about anything. And he always... we always had good sparring sessions because I didn't fear him after a while. For quite a long time, I had this fear. But once I overcame that fear, then it didn't matter what he did to me. I trusted him implicitly not to completely annihilate me. So it built up enough courage and confidence within me to take whatever he gave me and just move forward and just, get my eyes back on the target again and again. And that's why the spiritual teachers are so important, because they create that safe space for you to where they're often throwing contrast at you. A lot of teachers, if you look at them, they're throwing contrast at the student left, right, and center. And, but they're doing it in a safe environment where the student can build up their own strength and courage and all the rest of it. It's the same that a mentor does or anything like that. Is you creating the safe environment for them to take the knocks of life and then get back on track. So, it really was very beneficial, because I started using that philosophy with anything and everything in life.
Give us an example.
I used to hate emotional conflict.
Okay.
Absolutely hate it. I used to run a mile. Now you can throw as much emotional conflict as you want to at me. It really has no effect on me whatsoever.
How did you respond in the past?
I would avoid it, run away, avoid the people, go away from them, just try run a mile. But now it's really easy for me. People can throw whatever they want to me. They can tell me they hate me. They can tell me they hate my philosophy. They can tell me LOA shit. They can tell me anything they want to. And it has no effect on me. It's like water off a duck's back. It's of no consequence anymore. Because when you become really clear about what you believe, where you're going, what's yours, and that doesn't matter how much they torture you, tie you up, or whatever they do to you, they can't take away your belief, your idea of where you're going and what you want to do. Inside your mind, as long as you know from the law of attraction point of view that it doesn't matter how much they chain you up, if you're clear, if you can focus enough on being where you want to be, the universe will find a way of manifesting it.
What was the part about where you refocused back onto your target? Because that's the story you were telling us about the Kung Fu, that your teacher was teaching you, no matter how you get hit, refocus quickly back on your target.
You're asking me in terms of the emotional conflict?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So slowly but surely, it's a process. It's not something one day you're running away from emotional conflict, the next one you're just standing there and letting it happen as much as it wants to. It was a process of, it's not so bad when they do this to me or they say this to me, or if I don't take it personally, then it's not really a problem. And so it's like a building up of a whole years and years and years of understanding and training and belief and all the rest of it. And so
it's not just desensitizing. It's not just desensitizing yourself to that thing that you didn't like before.
There is a level of desensitization because it doesn't affect you anymore the way it used to. But emotional conflict is usually somebody else's stuff, isn't it?
Mm.
And you start realizing that it's just their stuff and it's not really your stuff. So let them come out with their stuff. It's okay. I can stand here and take it. So it's not that you desensitize. It's just you're really clear that it's their stuff. And you can mirror it and you can show them and you can give them a safe enough space, because you're not going to lash out at them, but you can make a safe enough space for them to throw that garbage at you and all the rest of it and just let it go and wash over you. And once people have got it out, have you noticed when somebody really gets it out, and it's okay after that?
Oh, yeah.
They just needed to get it out.
It's almost alarming how quickly they can shift after that.
Yeah. So, you become a good sounding board for them. You become that nice place where they feel safe enough. And believe me, when you are perceived in this light, people do throw things at you and they're very happy, and they even apologize afterwards and all the rest of it. And, but they're kind of happy that they've got somebody they can actually throw it onto, and they don't take it too personally. They actually respect that. There's a lot of respect when you get to that position that happens in the background. A lot of it. A lot of people respect you for that.
So metaphorically speaking, the target, if you will, that you are instantly bringing your attention back to, it isn't so much a target that you're trying to hit with a Kung Fu punch. It's mainly putting your attention back on that person who's throwing all this emotional junk at you. Am I reading that right? Okay.
Yeah. So in the Kung Fu, it was really interesting because, it is physical.
Mm.
And when you do have the trust, I mean, my instructor always said to us, anybody loses their rag or, gets violent in any shape or form, they're out of the class. There's no questions, no discussion. There's no nothing. You do it once, you're out. And nobody ever did it. Nobody ever never, ever, as far as I remember, in any shape or form, lost their rag. We had girls in the class. We had, all different types of people. And my instructor often gave me the girls because I don't know why, but maybe I was a little more soft touch or something. But or the fact that I could handle, a girl hitting me and I wouldn't freak out about it.
Yeah,
I wasn't
sure.
going to lash them, smash them, and whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, it was just really interesting. Once you learn a level of control, based on the reality of the situation, not the disproportionate anger, lashing out aspect, you can really change a lot in your life, a huge amount. When your partner slams you for this, that, or the other, if you don't have guilt, you don't lash back, and you've got that solid foundation within you, there's no lashing at all. You just sit there and let it wash over you, and tomorrow's another day,
This feels very similar to me to the concept that The Stream, David Strickle, would talk about, the idea of drawing back. They would talk about it in terms of you have some transgressor who's transgressing against you, and in order to, in my terms, take the sting out of it, you kind of mentally draw yourself back and see them from source energy point of view, from a faraway point of view, so that it doesn't affect you anymore. And when you do that, it's just kind of gives you such a perspective that all that old energy that you didn't like before just becomes kind of unimportant. And that's kind of what I was sensing there when you were just describing what you were talking about with the Kung Fu students and so forth. That you just achieved a point where none of that had any importance attached to it.
It was also, when a parent disciplines a child, they say one of the things they recommend is when the child does something really, really naughty is send them to their room for a while, you cool down, you get your perspective, and then go back and deal with the punishment. But don't do it when you're in that state.
Right. Yeah. Of course, the more advanced position from that even, and that's a really advanced position, but even more advanced from that position is the position talking about dealing with a kid who's acted out or something, is recognizing that you don't actually have to punish somebody. Punishment's built in. It's just part of what happens. And if you're willing to allow it to work out the way it's going to work out, the lesson comes through. No lesson is avoidable.
The more a parent steps out the way, the greater the value.
Yeah.
And, my daughter did something that I can't even mention on the radio.
Okay.
It was
everybody's
really,
imagination
really
is all
something.
wired.
And I said to her, there's no need for me to punish you at all because you're punishing yourself. I've got no punishment for you. It's not necessary.
I never even liked the idea of the word punishment. I thought that the word was kind of contradictory, and I didn't know why.
Obsolete.
It is obsolete, I think. Well, it's not. I don't think it's obsolete just because a lot of people still use it. So in that sense, it's not obsolete.
Well, it's obsolete for maybe you and I.
I would agree. For you and I, it's definitely obsolete. But I think it's also ineffective. I think that's probably the better way of describing it. I didn't understand why.
For us, yeah.
Well, yes, exactly. But I didn't understand why it was ineffective until I learned LOA.
It was LOA that you're focused on what you don't want, and you're just amplifying it. Yeah,
you're just getting more and more and more of it, right? So the whole idea, punishing it has a whole has a morality to it. My moral rule needs to be imposed upon you, and it's almost never needed. Almost never needed. In fact, it's probably fair to say it's never needed, but I don't want to go to extremes because there may be a case I haven't thought of, so I'll just leave open that possibility. But for the most part, it's pretty hard to run into a situation where you really have to have a deliberately composed punishment involved, because it inevitably just pops up on its own. It's just a question of letting it pop up on its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If we had more time, I'd actually tell a story.
Because my Kung Fu instructor and I got to that point where, well, I got to the point. I said to him, I really don't want the gloves. Can we go down to the beach, have a sparring match with no gloves? And he said, you're ready for that. We can do it. So just him and I went to the beach, and we had this most incredible, and still today we talk about it, sparring match on the beach, just the two of us, the perfect strike and defense, and everything was just so flowingly beautiful that both of us still today remember it as one of our highlights of our Kung Fu. But it was amazing. It was just such a beautiful expression and experience that I treasure. You know, it's one of those life things. I mean, it was probably, 10, 15 minutes max. Probably not even that, 10 max.
Right.
That we were sparring, and it was just on the beach early in the morning, like about 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was just the two of us. And we had this most incredible sparring session.
Well, that's what it feels like to be in the zone.
Absolutely. We were both completely zoned in, and you know, it wasn't just one of us. Yeah.
I recall a similar situation where I was dancing, not with my wife actually, with another female dance partner. And this was a number of years ago. And she was somebody I danced with fairly often. I was in a dance community where you dance with a whole bunch of people. And on this one occasion, this one evening, we got to dance together. And I don't know what it was. I don't know why it worked out this way, but all moves, all dance steps disappeared. And what we ended up doing you talk about unique. We were talking about how you like stuff that was unique. Everything was unique about that dance.
All right. Literally, so you weren't following the two-step or jive.
Not
or
at all.
Steps,
all of that was gone.
But it was a complete flow between two individuals.
Total and complete flow. Yes. It was magical. And literally, I mean, in theory, I was leading. In practice, in theory, she was the follower. In practice, we were following each other and we were leading each other at the same time.
You know, Walter, I had almost an identical scenario because we had, I went to do ballroom dancing when I was a student, and there was an inner circle and then outer circle. So the outer circle with the girls, the inner circle with the guys, and then they do a little step and you get a different partner. So every round you get a different partner. And I got this one girl, and I had that precise experience almost down to the T. You just nailed it. And it was just so perfect. You know, I was tripping over the girls. They were trying to lead. I was trying to follow, you know, and then when I got this one girl, it was just 100% harmony. I was like, wow,
yeah.
How does this happen?
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's a wondrous feeling. And I mean, given that the average length of a song is 3.5 minutes, that's probably how long the dance was. It felt like 25.
I know. And it's something you just never forget, and it sticks
with
you.
And you appreciate it. Really cool.
That's when you realize the importance of cooperative components.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. It was total. What's the phrase you use? Co-creation. It was 100% co-creation.
Absolutely.
The whole thing was.
Cooperative component co-creating together.
That's what I aim for as much as I can in my life. And I'm glad to say we do it a lot here on the show, and that's a really good part. By the way, I want to remind people, you know, you can become a part of the co-creation too. That's why we have the LOA Today app, so you can send in a question like Avi did, or even a comment, and we will use it here on the show like we did with Avi. So take advantage. And by the way, if you have the Android version of the app, you'll want to do a forced uninstall and reinstall. Google and I had a little disagreement, and so we ended up with a situation where your app won't update properly, but just uninstall it and reinstall it, you'll be good. No big deal. So with that thought in mind, that's been a great conversation. Thank you very much, Louis. We got some good stuff. We actually did one of those dances like that.
Hi to Nash and Jeannie from YouTube.
Yes, in the live stream.
Hello, guys.
Glad to have you guys here too. So thank you very much. Thank you, Louis, and thank you especially to our podcast listeners without whom we would not have a podcast. We'll see you all next time here on LOA. Bye-bye.